everyone. We will start with Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jannavala Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jannavala Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vanjadanarandana Yashodanandana Vanjadanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hi. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 26, Verse 1, new chapter today. And the chapter is called Wonderful Krishna. Adipush Prabhu's favorite chapter. Just because he always says how wonderful is Krishna. So, Wonderful Krishna. Shri Sukuvacha evam vidani karmani gopa krishnasya vikshate atadvirya vidha prochu samhabhyetya shuvishmita. Shri Sukuvacha evam vidani karmani gopa krishnasya vikshate atadvirya vidha prochu Samhabhyetya suvishmita. Shri Sukuvacha evam vidhani karmani gopa krishnasya vikshate atadvirya vidha prochu samhabhyetya suvishmita. Shri Sukuvacha. Shri Sukadev Goswami said, Evam vidhani, like this, karmani, activities.
activities.
Gopaha,
Gopala,
the cowherd men.
the cowherd man.
Krishnasya,
Krishna,
of Lord Krishna.
Krishna,
Viksha,
Vya,
seeing.
Hu,
Te,
Te,
they.
Te,
Atat virya vidha,
Divarya,
unable to understand his power.
doesn't understand his power.
Rochahu, they spoke.
Therefore,
Samhabhyatya,
Samvaya,
approaching Nanda Maharaj.
Sruti Nama,
Shu Vishmita,
Suvismita,
very astonished.
very astonished.
Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Sukadev Goswami said, the cowherd men were astonished when they saw Krishna's activities, such as lifting Govardhan Hill. Unable to understand his transcendental potency, they approached Nanda Maharaj and spoke as follows. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this verse as follows. During Lord Krishna's pastime of lifting Sri Govardhan Hill, the cowherd men simply enjoyed the spiritual bliss of the Lord's activities without analyzing them. But afterwards, when they had returned to their homes, perplexity arose within their hearts. Yeah, thus they thought, now we have directly seen child Krishna lift Govardhan Hill. And we remember how he killed Putana and other demons, extinguished the forest fire, and so on. At the time, we thought that these extraordinary acts occurred because of a benediction from the Brahmanas, or because of Nanda Maharaj's great fortune, or that perhaps this boy had achieved the mercy of Lord Narayana and was thus empowered by him. But all these presumptions are false, because an ordinary 7-year-old boy could never hold up the king of mountains for 7 whole days. Krishna is not a human being. He must be the supreme Lord himself. Wait a second. But on the other hand, child Krishna loves it when we cuddle him, and he becomes morose when we, his uncles and well-wishers, simply worldly cowherd men, do not give him attention. He appears to become hungry and thirsty, steals yogurt and milk, sometimes plays tricks, tells lies, chatters childishly, and tends the calves. If he is actually the Supreme Lord, why would he do these things? Don't they indicate that he is an ordinary human child? We are totally unable to establish the truth of his identity. Therefore, let us go and inquire from the highly intelligent king of Raj, Nanda Maharaj, and he shall free us from our doubts. End of the quote. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the cowherd men thus made up their minds, and then they entered Nanda Maharaj's great assembly hall. We questioned him as described in the following verse. Now, let us pray together to understand. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jananjana Jalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadari Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yula Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagvijatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Apesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Dr. Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanusade Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Jai Shunyavadi Vastatare Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I sincerely pay my obeisances to all of you. Hare Krishna, so nice to see you. Pay my obeisances to all of you and seek your blessings to be able to speak. I was like climbing up to get on the Vyasa this morning, and I just had this like overwhelming feeling of like, it's actually so funny. Like, it's such a serious thing sitting on the Vyasa and like representing Srimad Bhagavatam. And I'm so ridiculously unqualified. And I was like, I'm so unqualified that I have like two like choices in this moment. Either to just be like, this is just like too much, like I like cannot do this, or to just kind of like laugh, like it's so ridiculous how unqualified I am, but like just like accept the mercy and just like flow with it. And I feel like that is like just devotional service in a nutshell. Like everything that we do, it's like we're completely unqualified to serve Krishna, but just like don't get mental about it, just like accept Krishna's mercy and just keep serving him with the blessings of the devotees. So yeah, this is such an amazing chapter and an amazing verse, and there's just like so much in this purport. So we've just finished the epic, most amazing, literally the best, in my opinion. Well, every pastime is the best, but this pastime is also the best. It's kind of like when Krishna's like, this devotee is the best, and this devotee is the best, like they're all the best. So this pastime is the best, one of the best. Pastime of lifting Govardhan Hill. So we just finished that pastime. And then it's like, okay, the cowherd men, and what it explains in the purport is that during the pastime of Govardhan Hill, all the cowherd men, they're just completely in the moment. They're completely absorbed with Krishna. And because they're just completely with Krishna and completely absorbed with Krishna, they're not even like thinking about like, wait a second, how is a 7-year-old boy like lifting up this huge mountain with his pinky finger of his left hand? Like, that's not even like occurring to them during the pastime. It's not like they're like, wait a second, like Krishna, what? Like, how are you doing this? They're just like, wow, Krishna is so beautiful. Wow, this is so amazing. Wow, like we're with Krishna. Krishna, look at you. You're lifting the Govardhan Hill. Wow, they're just like so in the moment that they're not even analyzing. Like the mental facility is like switched off. which is characteristic of Vrindavan. We were talking in Srimad Bhagavatam class on Monday, like a Srimad Bhagavatam community group that I lead, about like the difference between like Dwarka Vasis and Vrindavan Vasis. Dwarka Vasis, like they have it's like half and half. Like they have the conception, okay, Krishna is God, but like he's my husband, so it's kind of like half and half. But Vrindavan Vasis, as it's going to be explained, even though their thought process is like explained in this purport, it's like they're just so, the sweetness dial is just so turned up that the awe and reverence dial is just so turned down. And they're just so in love with Krishna that they like don't even conceive of the fact that he's like God. And so when they're in that moment with Krishna, like when they're with Krishna, the mental analyzing factor is just off, and they're just completely living in their heart space, which is just, like yogis and like new age people, aren't they always talking about like, just move from your head to your heart and just like get off the mental platform and just like, get into your like feeling and all of that. And that's healing and that's healthy and all of that. So the real way to do that is to follow in the footsteps of the Vrindavan Vasis. They're like the original best people at that, because they're just completely in their heart. And I was talking with my husband yesterday, and we were reading this verse and we were discussing, and he was like, yeah, it's like when you're in a festival and you're just like totally caught up in the festival, you're just totally caught up in your service, and you're just completely absorbed in your service, like especially if it's something like deity service or like decorating or something that's using your hands and using your body, and you're just, or cooking, like when you're cooking, it's like nothing exists except like the vegetables and the fire and the ghee and the spices, like everything else just like blocks out, and you're just completely in the moment. And then after the festival, you're like what just happened? Like 300 people were in the temple room, and like everybody was in complete ecstasy, and the prasadam wasn't ready on time, but somehow it got downstairs, and someone didn't show up for the hospitality table, but then someone else jumped in, and like we didn't have anybody to clean, but then people just like jumped in, and like what just happened? But it's like 1 a.m. and like we're like mopping the floor in the temple room, and it's like, wait, like what was that? It was like a whirlwind, and we've been up since like 3 a.m. this morning, and like the deities were so beautiful, and like, do I even remember? Like, was this all a dream? It's kind of like that, like after festival, like seriously, like Krishna, like who is Krishna? Like, how is that even possible? Sometimes it's like something like this, the serve, like have you ever been in a festival experience or service experience where it's like nothing, like cooking, like nothing is going right, the offering is supposed to be ready in 30 minutes, like the sabji isn't even like boiling, and like you don't even know how everything is going to be finished on time, and it's like you're in complete anxiety because actually maybe it's the festival, or maybe you're like serving your spiritual master, and it's like it's like, oh my god, like it's just like complete anxiety. But then somehow or other, like Krishna extends time and everything comes together, and it's like right on the dot. Your spiritual master walks upstairs, and it's like plate is on the table, and it's like, what? Like, how did that even like just happen? And then it's like, it's not my doing, that was like Krishna's mercy. So we've all had this experience of like, when you're in the moment, it's just like nothing exists. But then afterwards, you're like, the mental facility comes on, and you're like, that doesn't make sense according to material calculations. That's Krishna consciousness in a nutshell. Anand Bihari, you can title this class something along those lines. Like Krishna consciousness is in a nutshell, like it doesn't make sense materially.
Yes, it doesn't make sense. Good title.
Yeah. Logo for this class. Make it a t-shirt. doesn't make sense materially, but spiritually makes complete sense, because
Jai.
spirituality trumps all material laws. And there's no material impediments in devotional service. We used to want to make that a t-shirt at Bhakti Center. We were like, we're going to make a t-shirt, no material impediments. And then on the back, chant Hare Krishna. And yeah, so that is point 1 of this class. Now moving on to point 2. So when that like mental analysis comes back, their reasoning mind comes back after the fact, they're like, wait a second. We've seen Krishna lift Govardhan Hill. We saw him kill Putana, this like huge, massive demon who gave her breast with poison to him to suck. We saw him swallow an entire forest fire. That is like not ordinary. You know, a little fire can like completely destroy us. And Champakalata is like, yeah, anyways, side comment, side story. But like, I actually caught on fire in Gitanagari one time, and it was extremely scary. Like, you're like, I'm about to die. Like, fire is like very scary. But he just like swallowed an entire forest of fire. Ridiculous. And they're thinking, like, when these happens, we thought like maybe this is like a benediction from the Brahmanas. He got mercy, or because Nanda Maharaj is so fortunate, or maybe he had achieved the mercy of God, like he had achieved the mercy of Lord Narayana and was empowered by Lord Narayana, and therefore he was able to do all of these things. But then they're like, no. Really? Like a 7-year-old boy cannot hold up. They call it the King of Mountains. Like, I don't know who has seen Govardhan in this life, gone to do Govardhan Parikrama. It takes, if you're walking like briskly and not stopping, it takes 6 hours to walk around Govardhan Hill. And Govardhan Hill is smaller, much smaller now than it was then, because it shrinks the size of a mustard seed every day, which that sounds small, but it adds up. Because Krishna was here how long ago? Over 5,000 years ago. So that's a lot of days. So it's like much smaller now, and he's lifting it for 7 whole days. So they're like, okay, he's definitely not a human being. He's definitely God. So they come to this conclusion. And now what this always happens in Vrindavan, there's other times in the 10th canto where Vrijvasis come to the conclusion that Krishna is God. Who can name another time? An example. Mother Yashoda, right? Universal form. She's looking in Krishna's mouth. Krishna is revealing the universal form to her. And she's like, you know, whoa, like my son has the universe in his belly. That is not normal. He must be God. Then what happens to her after she sees that, says that he must be God? Yoga Maya influences her, because Krishna is like, I don't really like this bhav, this rasa, this reciprocation of like when my mother is all of a sudden acting weird with me, thinking that I'm God. I would much rather her just love me like her son. So Yoga Maya comes in and covers her with Krishna's internal potency and makes her be like, no, he can't really be God, because he like wants to suck my breasts and he wants to steal milk and he like cries when I like leave him. He's definitely just my son, you know? So same thing is happening here. They come to this conclusion, he's definitely God. And then what happens? Like a second later, they're like, no. But on the other hand, they start to think of like how Krishna acts, you know, like, okay, but God doesn't like want to be cuddled, you know, like he wants, isn't that so incredible if you think about it? Like, honestly, like who doesn't want to be cuddled by their mother? I'm 34 years old. I still want to be cuddled by my mother. Like I do. I love my mother. It's like, I go home and I'm like, mommy, like, just hold me. Like, it just never goes away, that like love for your mother. It's like, who of us in the material world, like doesn't want to be like held by our wonderful mother? So God also wants to be held by their mother, and he becomes morose when we don't give him attention. Isn't God supposed to be self-satisfied? Like, it's kind of like the Christian conception, God up in the sky by himself alone, like happy, but like, no, God, like he gets angry when we don't give him attention, like a little kid. Like that's how kids are. Like you look away from them for like a second. Like parents all the time talk about, you're a parent. I wonder if you have this experience. It's like if you're with your wife or your husband and like you stop paying attention to the kid for a second, and the husband and wife like pay attention to each other to have like a loving exchange. Sometimes the kid can be like, hey, like I'm the important one. Like, stop you all having a nice relationship. Like it's about me, isn't it? Yeah, he has this experience. He's a parent. And like even my mom tells me, like with this is a dog, not a child, but she's like, yeah, I can't even like, hug my husband without the dog be like, boop, boop, boop. Like, like, no, you all don't hug each other, like focus on me, So Krishna's like that, like, hey, no, it's about me. Like that's the whole Damodar pastime. His mother goes away for a second to get the milk that's boiling over on the stove. And she's doing it to serve Krishna. It's not like she's doing it because she's like, I want this yummy milk. She's thinking about like, I want Krishna to have this yummy milk. And he gets upset. And he appears to become hungry and thirsty. So we understand actually in the spiritual world, there is no hunger and thirst, which is like super good news, actually, because how many of us like are just totally, isn't it the most annoying thing in the entire world that we like get like hungry and thirsty? It's like we're so controlled by it. Unless we're on the level of Goswamis where we're like completely like above that. But it's like, hunger pains, people get hangry, like, like I'm so thirsty, I'm so hungry, like we need to eat or whatever. But it's like in the spiritual world, there is no hunger and thirst, which I think is just so amazing because you're not controlled by that. So Krishna, he's above that, but yet he appears to become hungry and thirsty. And as a matter of fact, he has like a huge appetite. He's always like, feed me. And he always wants milk sweets, and he always wants milk, and he always wants butter, and he always wants all these things. And he steals yogurt and milk because he's always wanting these things, and he's always wanting to feed the monkeys. And he plays tricks. He plays tricks with people. He tells lies, actually. The supreme absolute truth tells lies. Radhaswami always is like, in his lectures, he's like, how is that possible that the supreme absolute truth tells lies. And then he says, quote, when the supreme absolute truth tells a lie, the lie is the absolute truth. Because it's coming from the absolute truth. So like it has to be, yeah, but he tells lies. When we tell a lie, it's just nonsense. But when Krishna tells a lie, it's ecstatic. And he chatters childishly, but it's not prajalpa. In Nectar of Instruction, it says we should not chant, we should not talk unnecessarily about like unnecessary mundane things. When we do that, it's prajalpa, but when Krishna chatters childishly, it's perfect. And he tends the calves. So if he is actually the Supreme Lord, why would he do these things? Don't they indicate that he is an ordinary human child? So like God doesn't act like that. Like he's not God. So their conception of their like awakening of this realization that Krishna is God is immediately shut down. They're like, no. But then it's beautiful in the next line. The next line says, we are totally unable to establish the truth of his identity. Therefore, let us go and inquire from the highly intelligent king of Raj, Nanda Maharaj, and he shall free us from our doubts. So again, I was talking to my husband yesterday about these verses, and he said something so beautiful. He was like, this is such an instructive line that when you don't know what to do, when you are confused and when you have doubts, what do? You go to your seniors, you go to more advanced devotees, you go to your guru, and you say, I don't know. I don't know. Please instruct me. Please mitigate my illusion. Please enlighten me. And this is the process of Krishna consciousness. So it's just so important to go to a superior when we don't know the path forward. And that's humility. Sometimes we think, I know what to do. I have read Srimad Bhagavatam 3 times or whatever. I have read so much. I have understood so much. I have chanted so much japa. I have done so much service. I understand this Krishna consciousness. But we should always be not childish, but like a child, in the sense that we're simple. And Jesus said, what did he say? Something about like one must become like a child to enter the kingdom of God, in terms of like, who do we think we are? Even if like we've been practicing Krishna consciousness for like 20 years. We're babies. We're just learning how to walk. We've been in this material world for millions and millions of lifetimes. Like, what is our realization? And even if we have some realization, is that realization coming from us and because of what we've done? No, it's coming from the mercy of our gurus. And we should be humbled to always remember our position, that we're not serving Krishna directly. We're just assisting our guru. I've told this story before in Srimad Bhagavatam class. So forgive me if you've heard it before, but I feel like it's relevant in this moment to share again, and then we'll open up for questions and comments and corrections. But I one time had like I've had many times this experience of like having this realization, but one experience that like really it's very powerful was I was in Nepal and I was renewing my Indian visa to go back to India. And I was going to be going to Mayapur for the first time. I had never been to Mayapur. I had seen pictures of the deities, but I had never seen pictures of like the temple. And I had this conception in my mind of what the temple looked like. And then one night was talking on the phone to my Shiksha Guru, Rukmini Walker. We had it was literally like a 6-hour phone conversation. And we were discussing so many things. And we got off the phone. And then I took rest. And I had this like very vivid dream of Rukmini Walker taking me to Mayapur and taking me to the temple and showing me the deities, showing me the temple. And in the dream, my analytical mind was like, this is definitely not what Mayapur looks like. This is like completely the opposite of like what I think Mayapur looks like. This is like incorrect. So then I woke up. And then like when I actually arrived in Mayapur a couple days later and like went to the temple, I started crying because the temple looked exactly like it was in my dream. And exactly the opposite of what my analytical mind had thought it would look like. And I had this realization of like, I cannot enter Mayapur. Only my gurus can show me Mayapur. And just one more quick story. I had another experience. One time I was in the temple room at the Institute in Washington, D.C., Kunti and Madhavacharya's house. And we were chanting japa with Radhanath Swami and Madhavacharya. It was just the three of us in the temple room. And my japa was like the best japa I've ever had in my entire life. I was like, wow, so much taste in the holy name. Like, wow. I could chant forever. And then Radhanath Swami left the room and my japa became like totally like mundane. Like the worst japa ever. And I just had this like, again, overwhelming realization of like, I cannot chant japa. It is by the mercy of Radhanath Swami that I can chant japa. So that's my class, Hare Krishna. Let's open it up for comments, questions like that. I think Andrea just raised her hand. Since I see her, I'm going to call on her first.
It's okay if you want to do the temple first. But
No, we'll do you. We'll open it up to the temple.
I just wanted to quickly say, thank you so much for sharing that transcendental pastime that you had with Rukmini Walker Prabhu, which you know is very dear to me as well.
Yes.
And that's just so amazing. And this happened and I haven't had anybody to share it with because I wasn't sure that anybody would understand, and I want to share with you. Just last week, I had a dream where I was at some temple and all I could see was the feet of the deities, and they were both black and they had gold painting all over their bodies, and I could only see like from knees down, and they were dancing, and Rukmini Prabhu was there, and she and in my dream I was like, this is not possible because I know she's in Europe, but I was just like, well, this is great, at least I'm here. And then the deities were dancing, and then the tulsi leaves were going everywhere as they were dancing, and she was frantically trying to grab the tulsi leaves to put it back at their feet. And then in the dream I was like, Rukmini Prabhu, let me take a picture of you with the deities. So I got a picture of her in the dream, of her like holding on to the legs of the deities. And I was just like, wow. And then I was just like, wow, I have such an overactive imagination. But then when I told her about the dream, she was just like, thank you for sharing this rasa with me. And I was just like so moved, because I feel like now, like you would understand, like it's like you're having this pastime with them in the dream, and they're just so merciful. I don't know. I felt like you would understand. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I completely understand. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. Okay, temple room. Anything? We have 2 minutes, 7:58.
Right. We're extraordinary class. I mean, gosh, you were born, your spiritual master is empowering you in an extraordinary way. One of the first things you mentioned was the distinction, the honor, the privilege of having the service of sitting on Vyasatan and speaking, and you were thinking, well, I should reject it or I should just roll with it. And included in that explanation you gave is the understanding that whatever respect, whatever honor, whatever glory, donation people give us, our response is, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. That we don't think it's for me. We don't reject it thinking it's for me. We don't accept it thinking it's for me, but we accept it and we pass it on to the spiritual master, which is an interesting perspective. And there's a devotee, let's call him devotee number 1. I won't mention his name.
Not devotee number 2?
Pardon me?
Just kidding. I'm joking. I said
Anyway, when I see this devotee, he always says to me, what do you want? And I said, well,
That's me.
our spiritual master says that if someone asks you, what do you want? We can say, I want love of God. And then this devotee, he always does this. He always says to me, you don't want love of God. You're just distributing Krishna's prasad to the homeless so people will praise you, and you just want to get praised and you'll be glorified, and that it's just subtle sex life. I say, well, you're actually true. You're actually right. That I do hope to inspire people, and they'll offer some appreciation, some praise. But then when someone does offer us appreciation or praise, we say, oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. That the credit should go where credit is due. And that's an interesting reflex when we say, oh, glories to Temple devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glories to Temple, Hare Krishna. But when we get that glory, when we get that respect, we get some appreciation. We don't reject it, and it's not wrong, but we pass it on. There's a story, the Christmas Carol with Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge, and whenever somebody tries to tell him about something, he's very greedy and he's just attached to all this wealth. And if anybody ever tries to tell him that there's another way of looking at the world, another way, bah, humbug, right? Sometimes when I say like that, bah, humbug. Actually, some people, he's only pretending to be a conditioned soul and acting in a harsh, conditioned way. But actually, when a person is in darkness for a long time, if there's light, they go, what is that? What is that weird thing?
Yeah.
That we can actually think there's no such thing as love. And some people say there is no God. And some people grossly or subtly say there is no guru. And some people say there are no devotees. Nobody loves Krishna. It's not possible. Bah, humbug. So we have to be careful that we don't have, and to one extent, we still have that residual conditioned response, when we hear about the quality of life in the spiritual world and these loving exchanges and these amazing, sweet relationships that Krishna has with his devotees, we might think, yeah, nah, no, but it's there. The truth is the truth. And here comes the truth. Vasudeva offering Pancho.
Great class, Champakalata. Thank you very much. Okay. Cameras on, please. Okay. Hare Krishna. I was picturing Andrea. When I was taking darshan, I was picturing Andrea and Rukmini Walker in Champakalata, and tulsi leaves flying around, and they were trying to catch them. And then Henry Prabhu and Brahmatirtha Prabhu flew over, like an outer space situation. Yeah, Henry Prabhu, there you are. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. It's so nice to be part of this little family, dear devotees. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Brush your teeth for Krishna. Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi is over. And come again tomorrow. Amrita Kishori beautifying herself for Krishna. Beautifying her spiritual self for Krishna. Okay.